Hey there, it is Saturday, so it's movie night, and I'm here to present another quadruple feature for your viewing pleasure. I've got a whole new look this week, but it's still your boy Paul, here to present another quarantine quadruple feature. I've actually phased out calling these quarantine quadruple features, because Gina was like, I don't think people are really quarantined anymore. However, with the new upsurge in COVID cases over the past few weeks, I think it's safe to say that we are on our way to a second lockdown, so maybe I should just resume calling these quarantine quadruple features. Either way, I never really stopped my self-isolation, and I've just concluded week 36, so I'm here with another quadruple feature, and the topic is one that I'm very fascinated by. In fact, this was a topic that I wanted to run a few weeks ago before the election, because I thought it was something that would heavily weigh into the election or what people were discussing before the election, but I did want to keep October mainly focused on horror, and this is still a topic that's affecting a lot of people today. Social media fascinates me. On the one hand, I'm very intrigued by it. On the other hand, I absolutely despise it. I fucking hate social media. However, I still partake. I have a Twitter, I have a Facebook and an Instagram, and obviously a YouTube account. I can't do these videos without social media. I can't post them anywhere or spread the word about them or have people I don't know find them and watch them. So, it's kind of a conundrum for me because it is a bit of a time waster. And when you find yourself doom scrolling after, 5 or 10 minutes, you're like, what the fuck am I doing right now? On the other hand, I need it for something like these quadruple feature videos that I'm doing. So while sometimes I'm like, ugh, I just want to delete all of this crap, on the other hand, it's like, well, I don't want to stop these videos. I'm sort of committed to doing these. So I don't know. It's kind of tough. I think social media is damaging for a few other reasons. Obviously, there's a lot of comparison people do with other people's lives. Social media seems to be all about presenting yourself in the best light, making people jealous of this amazing life that you have, when I think most of the stuff you're looking at, it's not truly happy people. And I think the level of depression that is higher today than it has been in any previous decade, I think a lot of that is to do with social media. It also takes away time that we are able to enrich our lives in other ways, whether it's like watching movies or having like genuine conversations with people or reading fucking books, which I feel like most people don't even do anymore. There's not as much time for those things which are genuinely fulfilling in someone's life because there's so much time spent scrolling on one of your feeds. And that's not to say that like I'm above all of that, because it can be fun to just kind of like tune out and see what your friends are up to. But unfortunately, what started as let's keep in touch with our friends and family and see what they're up to has turned much more into a advertising political machine. So if you've watched the documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, it really highlights a lot of the issues with social media. It's got some kind of cheesy elements to it, but it's very enlightening about social media, especially if you don't really know anything about it or you just kind of view it as like, oh, a way to connect with people. It's not really that. It's much bigger than that. So I would recommend checking that one out and really examining the political divide that has created, not only in this country, but other countries as well, and how things like Facebook have determined the outcomes of elections in smaller countries, and how that has really played a factor in our 2016 election, and how it very close to derailed our 2020 election and is still in the process of riling people up who think that the election has been stolen. Like, if Trump didn't have Twitter, he wouldn't be able to just like get his view out there to hundreds of thousands of people, because the news has essentially stopped airing his ridiculous claims of a fraudulent election, but he still has access to all of these people through Twitter, which is another way of like social media being a very bad thing for the country. I highly recommend everyone watching that, especially if you're sort of like addicted to social media. You pull it up every time you open your phone. And if you are social media savvy and you do a lot of reading up on social media, none of the stuff is really like that revelatory or new, but it does highlight things in a very concerning way. Facebook, Instagram, these things, they monetize your time, right? So the amount of time you spend on the app is what they're trying to get. So they show you ads that are geared toward you. They show you things that'll pique your interest and keep you scrolling, because the longer you're on the app, the better it is for them. So that's their job, is to keep you looking at it. And we all know that. And it's basically just how comfortable are you giving more of your time to that app. The thing that really concerned me was how much of an echo chamber your social media is. You curate your friends lists and the things that you're interested in, and then Facebook kind of continues refining your interests for you. So it starts to learn the things that you're interested in, the type of things that you search for, the type of things you engage with on social media, and it starts weeding out other things that you're not as active with, which might be someone you don't agree with politically, someone whose content you don't engage with very much. Eventually, you're not even going to see their stuff, because they're going to be sending back to you the stuff you've shown an interest in, the types of stores that you've shopped at, the type of Google searches you've made. Those all go into shaping your social media accounts, the things that you like, the things you comment on, the things that you engage with the most, which eventually turns your social media account into like an echo chamber, right? So it's reflecting all of your views and your ideas, or the ideas that you've been exposed to that you're then kind of espousing as your own ideas. And it doesn't really let you see multiple sides of a debate. It doesn't let you see people that you disagree with that often. So when you see a bunch of right-wing Republicans that are saying they get all of their news from Facebook, and you're thinking, how are you getting that news from Facebook? I don't get that news at all from Facebook. I get support Joe and Kamala. I don't get QAnon conspiracy theories or anything like that. It's literally dividing this country more than it's ever been. Maybe not more than it's ever been, because it's always been a very divided country. But social media is making it really kind of impossible to see things from another person's point of view. It's really putting blinders on both sides to what other people are feeling, what other people are saying. There's no middle ground anymore. And I think a big part of that is the divide you see on social media. At least that's kind of like the Facebook angle. That's kind of how I see Facebook, which a bunch of really extreme right-wing Republicans have been leaving in droves after the election because their feelings aren't being catered to for Trump losing. So now they're all going to this stupid thing called Parler. Hate speech is a little more welcomed on something like Parler. And some of the things that I've heard Parler called, which made me laugh, were okay stupid and only clans. I like those two. But that's kind of how I view Facebook, where you're going to see a bunch of people who pretty much agree with you, and then the occasional stupid Trump meme from like your embarrassing relative or something like that, or like, I'm not going to wear a mask for this reason, right? Instagram I kind of view as like constantly comparing your life with other people's lives. Instagram is also kind of looking like a store. It's more about like the advertisements. The posts you see most frequently seem to be like celebrities or ads, and I'm seeing less and less of actual friends and their content. And then Twitter is essentially like a big battleground for who is the wokest, who has the hottest take, who is commenting on things that are happening in the world in real time with the most perfect view that is going to get the most retweets and going to get everyone agreeing with you. It's just, you can't misstep it all on social media. I do think social media is having a very bad effect on us as a country, especially like the younger generations right now, like my age range and younger. I really think in a few decades, we are going to be seeing the results that growing up with social media is having once you're older. And a lot of that is just this unwavering certainty that you are right about everything, and this unwavering certainty in admonishing the people you don't agree with and them being dead. I mean, it goes beyond cancel culture to just like this totally unforgivable switch in your mind of like bad, done, dead forever. And it's just not a very good place for communication and discussion. No social media outlets are really good for that. Even me saying this, there are people that are going to watch this and be like, you know, wake the fuck up, old man. You're not hip with how we're viewing things now. And maybe I'm not, but God damn it, it's just so fucking toxic and aggressive and fucking angry. And it makes me want to shut all of it off. But it also makes me want to engage with people where I can. And I want people to learn and have interesting things that they can discuss. But whatever. That's probably not really the point of social media anymore. And then you have something like YouTube, which is where I post these videos, and that can be frustrating as well because, you know, I'm not a fucking influencer. I'm just making these videos hoping that they get to people who like watching movies and who want some movie recommendations and maybe want to engage in like some film conversation. But, you know, I'm not like an influencer. You know, I'm not like, yo, hey fam, you know, smash that subscribe button, hit the likes, share it with all your friends. I don't really like plug it that way. I don't have merch. I don't do any of the things that like I'm supposed to do to have a big YouTube following. So, you know, I don't really get that many views. On average, one of my videos usually gets between like 15 and 50, somewhere in there. And last week I did a video I was really looking forward to and spent a lot of time getting ready for the Friday the 13th series. I did a big retrospective video, and granted it was long. It was almost an hour and a half, easily the longest video that I have done or will do. But I was hoping that would find its way to some horror fans or people who would be really interested in something like that. But it had a pretty paltry turnout on YouTube. I think it had like 25 views. On Instagram, it was probably the worst one of my videos has performed. That can be kind of disheartening, especially when you're looking at social media analytics. There's options on Instagram and YouTube where you can see the breakdown of how many people watched your video on average, how long did they watch it for, at what point did people dip out, you know? And that can be pretty disheartening to, you know, work really hard on something and then find out that the average view time of it was 12 and a half seconds. You know, that can kind of bring you down. But I do know at least one person got all the way through my hour and a half Friday the 13th video because I had a trivia question at the very end of the video that pertained to something I'd said within the first half hour of the video. And congrats to my buddy Alberto. The Friday the 13th box set is in the mail and you'll be getting it on Wednesday. So thanks for watching and engaging. Meanwhile, the week before that, I did a video on the topic of disaster porn. And I mean, I really like disaster porn movies and I enjoyed doing the video and talking about it. But like a lot of work didn't go into it. I was just kind of like, oh, I've got to do my quadruple feature video. And I kind of went up and bullshit and talked about these movies that I like. And then that video gets on YouTube over 1,000 views in like 24 hours. So I was like, what the fuck? Why are so many people watching that? Easily the most. It's like at 1,200 views right now. The most I've ever had on any of the videos on YouTube. And the only thing I could deduce was that like the word porn was in the title. Another thing I later found out is that one of the movies I talked about in that video was Threads, which originally aired on the British Broadcasting Corporation or the BBC. So I tagged it BBC. You can tag your YouTube videos. And I found out that BBC is actually a porn search for big black cock. So I just think people were looking up, you know, specific things on YouTube and came across my video. But I don't even know what people are doing looking up on YouTube because you can't even watch porn or nudity on YouTube, to my knowledge. So what are people even searching? So as an experiment this week, when I post my social media video, I'm going to tag it porn, BBC, sex, or any other very weird, specific sex search terms I can find. And I'm going to see what happens with this video, just to see if people are searching up crazy, I guess, porn-adjacent videos on YouTube. But to see a video like that get over 1,000 views, and then one that I really loved and put hard work in get like 25, you know, it can dampen your spirit a little bit. And weeks ago, months ago, while I was doing these videos, I really had to have a come to Jesus moment with myself. I had to keep looking at these very paltry responses to videos that I was very passionate about and I cared a lot about and think, what's my end goal here? And my end goal isn't necessarily like become a movie reviewer, because as I've said numerous times, these aren't really about the movie reviews to me. It's more about just kind of like spreading film love and film appreciation for movies that I really like. So I don't have any aspirations to be a film reviewer or anything. I'm not trying to get advertising on these videos or anything like that. So I just had to think, like, is me making these videos with a limited amount of people watching them actually worth it? Or should I be spending my time doing something else? But ultimately, I decided that I enjoy doing these videos. I like talking about films and not having people interrupt me to tell me why I'm wrong or why they actually don't like the movie that I'm talking about. And I decided that these are kind of an interesting time capsule, and if they turn out to not be interesting for a lot of other people, they can be interesting for me in the long run. When I look back on this year, I kind of have this diary that I've been keeping, this film diary, to kind of see where we've progressed week after week, or where my life has progressed week after week. So I ultimately decided that it was worth it for me, whether people were watching them or not. But I know that's not the case for a lot of people that are on social media, where their self-worth is determined by the amount of views or likes or clicks or subscribers that they get. That can be a really dehumanizing, awful thing for people that are obsessed with social media, and just another way that people are kind of downtrodden by this very bizarre thing that has infected the entire world. So today we're going to be looking at 4 films that are really diving into the complexities of social media. Of course, the movie we're starting with is the social media film to end all social media films. It's, of course, 2010's The Social Network. Came out a decade ago and is somehow even more relevant today than it was back then. This is about the humble beginnings of Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg. This movie really kind of highlights how much of a scoundrel he really is, how much he really doesn't care about fucking other people over. And I think this is just kind of the perfect start. If you want to dive into movies about social media, this is the perfect start, because this basically sets the tone for everything that comes after. It's a brilliant film by David Fincher. Do you remember a decade ago when David Fincher lost Best Director at the Academy Awards to the director of Cats for a movie that nobody has talked about since 2010, The King's Speech? When was the last time you talked about that movie? Probably not that recently. When was the last time you heard social media discussed? Probably within the past few months. So that just kind of goes to show the Academy doesn't always get it right, and the movies that have longevity and importance to society long after they're released sometimes don't get recognized as the best movie at the time. So this did not win Best Picture, even though it very much deserved to, and it did not win Best Director either. Have no fear, though, David Fincher is going to win Best Director this year. I haven't even seen Mank yet, but what the fuck else has come out? And David Fincher is releasing a major movie on Netflix in December. I'm certain he's going to win Best Director this year, and it's probably going to win Best Picture as well, securing Netflix Best Picture for the first time. All it took for Hollywood to accept them was a pandemic that shut the rest of the industry down. So The Social Network stars Jesse Eisenberg in his least obnoxious performance, or obnoxious in a way that works for the character. Brilliant direction by David Fincher. This is the movie that started his collaboration with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross doing scores, who have gone on to have a really brilliant musical career outside of just their band, and now they're doing really great work in film and television. And of course, it has a really tremendous screenplay by Aaron Sorkin. The dialogue in this movie is wonderful. It's one of the best written movies. The performances are great, and there's a really cool performance by Armie Hammer, who plays the Winklevoss twins. And there's a really great feature-length making of documentary on this that really dives into all of the details of the movie, but also how they did the Winklevoss twins. And it was basically they cast 2 people, and then they digitally put Armie Hammer's face over the other person in all of the scenes where they're actually together. So he's kind of doing double time with his performance in the movie. But it's just a fantastic movie. I mean, you've probably seen The Social Network. If not, remedy that immediately. But I can't really have a social media night without talking about one of the greatest films of the past decade. The Social Network. Movie number 2. This one, I feel like it's very easy to write off because of what the movie spawned. The movie is Catfish. But if you haven't seen Catfish just because you associate it with an MTV reality show, I really think you should go back and take a look at Catfish. If you haven't seen Catfish since 2010, I would recommend going back and checking it out again, because it's actually a really strong movie, and it's a very good documentary. It's much better than any episode of the TV show. The TV show is pretty entertaining. I watched seasons of it. I'm very fascinated by this idea of catfishing. But the show kind of has the structure down. They meet with the person who thinks they're getting catfished. They do their sleuthing. They travel there. They confront the person. Every episode is essentially the same. The movie is a bit more of a mystery, because at the time, catfish did not mean anything. That was not common vernacular. I mean, since then, Catfishing has been added into the dictionary. It's become like shorthand for going on the internet and tricking people into thinking that you're someone else. And this movie was really eye-opening when I saw it, because while I knew the internet was like a dangerous place where people are pretending to be people that they're not, I never imagined it was happening to the level that it was actually happening. And this movie really opened my eyes to how disturbed some people are that are online, posing in multiple accounts. And the idea of one person creating kind of an entire web or family of like Facebook characters where they're all interacting with each other just to convince people that they're all real so that they can start having relationships with them and get private information from them, or sometimes money, or sometimes like sexual messages or photographs or incriminating things like that. This movie was really eye-opening for me because in my naivete, not spending much time on the internet, I didn't really know that it was that dark and twisted of a place, but Catfish really kind of dives into that. Neve, who is all over reality TV now, he's on this season of like Dancing with the Stars. Of course, he's in the TV show Catfish that like this movie kind of gave him an entire career. And his brother and filmmaking partner, the two guys who actually made the movie, they went on to have careers as well. After this, they went and directed the third Paranormal Activity film. So they're kind of still making movies, but Neve has kind of become the star of Catfish. Since he's the one in front of the camera, he's kind of launched an entire career out of this movie. And if you don't know, it's basically him kind of communicating with like a fan of his photography who's like this little girl who's a painter, and the little girl's mom starts sending him all these paintings, and he kind of has like online and on phone communications and relationships with a number of people in their family before he starts to realize that he thinks that it might be fewer people than he realizes, and ultimately it's all one very disturbed person who is basically contacting him every day as different people and kind of playing out her own soap opera for her relationship with this guy. And this was before we knew what catfishing was. And the movie was actually advertised. I remember the reason I saw this is I saw a trailer that was like, it was like spooky. It was a really scary trailer, and it was like, you won't believe the reveal. Don't spoil it for people. The twist in this movie, which we know, I mean, we know what the twist is because we know what catfishing is now. The success of the show has made it impossible for you not to know how Catfish ultimately turns out. But the trailer was like, it's this big, shocking, scary thing. And I had not heard anything about it. I was literally sitting at Gina's house. We were in Long Beach in her apartment, and we just saw a trailer on TV, and I was like, what the fuck is Catfish? And she's like, I don't know. No, in social media, even a decade ago, knowing what it was is you can't really get online without shit getting spoiled for you immediately. If a TV show airs, it already has spoilers online. If you hop on Twitter, when something has already aired in New York, everyone's already talking about it, and it's spoiling it for the West Coast feed that hasn't even seen it yet. So I was like, okay, I can't even hop on social media. I can't even hop on the internet. And we went and saw it that night. And we were both like, oh my gosh, that is so fucking spooky. It's very easy to write off Catfish because of the monumental success of the spin-off of that movie. But I actually think it really holds up as a very disturbing, interesting portrait of a disturbed woman and her family, but also of the lengths people will go on social media to connect with people that they wouldn't otherwise connect with. It's got a very lovely, jaunty score by Mark Mothersbaugh, and it's just a great movie. Don't write it off just because of its reputation. It's actually a very solid documentary, because catfishing has become one of the things people love to use social media for the most, which is scary. Movie number 3, I think, is a really interesting one because it doesn't take a negative view on social media, which is so easy to do because social media can be so toxic that it's really easy to just make a very critical piece about it. But rarely do you see someone incorporating social media just in a social media exists. And if you're writing a movie about kids, you have to acknowledge social media. But I don't think there's a movie that has done that more effectively than 8th Grade. In 8th Grade, the girl in it, she has a little YouTube show where she kind of gives little personal diaries and gives makeup tutorials and all of these things that a kid in 8th grade would do if they had their own little YouTube show. And it's not really a toxic view on social media. It's just kind of like an honest view on hey, it's a thing that we have to acknowledge and put into a story about a girl who's in 8th grade today. But aside from the social media angle, it's just a really beautiful movie with a tremendous performance by, the fuck is her name? With a really great performance by Elsie Fisher. It's directed by Bo Burnham, who's a pretty successful comedian and moved into directing people's stand-up shows, and he has a really interesting visual style for how he directs other people's stand-up shows and his own. He's a really funny comedian. He does really great like little musical interludes in his shows, and then he made this, and he was like still in his like I think like late 20s when he made it, and I completely resent this guy for how talented he is and the amount of accomplishments he's had. But I thought 8th Grade was a really beautiful film, a very lovely, honest portrayal of a young girl struggling through middle school, which is something that like everyone can relate to. And I don't think it like kind of ostracizes male audiences at all. I think it's a very effective movie for kind of any audience. And side note, this is actually the first movie that I ever took Pepper to. We didn't know when we got her if she was going to be a movie dog and would join us at the movie theaters or not. She's very small, but we didn't know if she was actually going to be noisy or try to bark or whatever. And I was thrilled to learn that she would either just sit on my lap or in the seat next to me and quietly watch the movie. Maybe she pants a little loud. Hi, did you like 8th grade? Pepper? Say hi, Pepper. This is Pepper. She loved 8th grade. It was your first movie, remember? What was that? It was nothing. It was me. You miss going to the movies too? I know. We'll go again soon. Maybe not soon, but wear a mask, please. I love 8th grade. All right, last movie. I actually thought quite a bit about what the last movie was going to be, and I was kind of trying to incorporate a horror film. There have been a number of horror films that have talked about social media, and they're not all successful. There's some really bad ones. Like Me, #horror. A few others I think are really bad. I'm not recommending those. But then there are a few that are pretty good. I mean, in a way, you could say Hard Candy is a horror film about social media, and Hard Candy was one that I was thinking about. Unfriended, I think, is a really great example of, you know, using social media in a horror film. Tragedy Girls, I think, is pretty good. Assassination Nation is really solid as well. And I would recommend any of those, especially Tragedy Girls and Assassination Nation, mainly for its interesting casting of like female protagonists. I think they did a really good job with the casting in those movies, and they deal with social media in a very interesting way. But I went with something that I thought was sort of kind of emotionally more true and dived into the darker aspect of social media in a more effective, believable way for someone with a mental illness. And that's Ingrid Goes West. Aubrey Plaza plays Ingrid, who is a girl that doesn't really have any friends, but sort of becomes obsessed with people via social media and becomes obsessed with becoming their friend. And the person she becomes obsessed with in this film is Elizabeth Olsen, who I absolutely fucking adore. I think she is awesome. I was a little bit heartbroken when she went over to the Marvel Cinematic Universe because I knew that was going to pull her away from like cooler, more indie shit. But I think she is such an awesome actress, and she's fantastic in this as like an influencer type person. And the movie does a really great job of poking fun and kind of satirizing social media without ever taking it into an unrealistic direction. Now, it goes pretty extreme with how it presents Aubrey Plaza's character, who's like clearly a mentally disturbed person who lives and dies on social media. It's like she's obsessed with social media and presenting herself in a certain light, but it really shows kind of other people's views on social media as well. Like the type of people that are like, no, I'll never use social media. I'm all about truth and honesty. And the people who are trying to do it for a career, the people who really want to present themselves in the most picture perfect way, the people who will use certain people to get likes, to get follows, to get pictures with them, and then drop them once they find someone else. Really the shallow, vapid nature of social media, specifically in California, is really what Ingrid Goes West dives into. So it's a very dark comedy, and I'd say it's more dramatic than it is funny, but I think it's a really fascinating portrait of kind of how some people use social media in our modern times. It also has Ice Cube's son, O'Shea Jackson Jr. in this, who is very quickly becoming one of my favorite leading men. He is so fucking charming. If you haven't seen Straight Outta Compton, if you haven't seen Long Shot or Ingrid Goes West, O'Shea Jackson Jr. is really awesome, and he just has like a natural charisma on screen, and every movie he's in, I love him in the movies. And in this movie, he's like obsessed with Batman, and he loves the movie like Batman Forever, and it's just kind of like charming and quirky and funny in not an obnoxious hipstery type way that a movie like this could be. It's not like too critical of obnoxious hipsters. It's not above it at all, but it's critical enough to be effective. But yeah, Ingrid Goes West is going to be movie recommendation number 4 for social media. So those are the 4 movies that we're going to be watching that are critiquing and exploring the wild, weird, fucked up world of social media, which is truly one of the most bizarre, interesting, and frightening things. You can't talk about social media without watching Fincher's masterpiece, The Social Network. Catfish. 8th grade, Ingrid Goes West, which shows that social media can certainly be a bad thing for your mental health if you are valuing your self-worth off the amount of little hearts you get. So those are the 4 movies that we're going to be watching for social media. As you can see, I am also very divided on my views on social media. I'm certainly not trying to pretend to be above it, because I partake and I am on social media posting shit and making these videos and, you know, trying to make jokes and post funny pictures and things like that. But it certainly is frustrating, and I do my best to separate my actual life from social media. I don't think that I present too drastically of a different life than I have. I try to make it pretty open and honest, but you know, there's a bit of a facade in everyone's social media persona. Have you ever been friends with someone and they're like a totally real, authentic person, and then you see how they present themselves on social media and you're kind of like, that's not the person I know. What the fuck is that all about? I mean, I try not to do that, but I'm sure we all do it to a degree. I've rattled on about social media long enough. Thanks for watching. Remember, keep washing your hands, social distance, cancel those Thanksgiving plans. It's not worth getting the whole family together to see grandma if you guys wind up killing grandma. And of course, wear a mask, god damn it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. If you liked it, remember to like and smash that subscribe button. Gucci! See you next week.